Hello everyone, and thanks for coming back to the channel. Today we're going to take a look at the awesome Youbi XV95. It comes with awesome branded 1103 7500 kV motors. Inside the canopy we have an F3 flight controller with an OSD, 10 amp 4-in-1 ESC, 600 TV line camera, 48 channel 25 milliwatt VTX, 2-inch Jim Fam 2035 props, JSD for your battery connection, a rubber band to hold your battery. Mine came with an FR Sky receiver. Bottom plate's measuring 2 millimeters. Does appear to be 95 millimeters. It weighs 49.3 grams. Comes with a 500 milliamp 2S battery. That battery weighs 30.6 grams. Comes with a spare canopy, prop protectors, cabling harness for your receiver, and an extra battery strap. It also comes with a manual. It also comes with extra props. This is a design we've seen many times before. You know, King Kong has done this. Awesome or Youbi, I don't know who they are, if they're related or what, but I'm glad to see that they're using some nice quality props. I think 1103 is a good combination, especially when you're going to run these props and you're looking for a machine that's got long flight times. I've had question after question over the last 2 years, I guess, of making videos of people wanting 9-minute flight time. Now that's more aerial photography flight time, not really, you know, this style of vehicle flight time. But this one comes in, you can get 6 minutes. You know, I got 5:30 and I felt like I was pushing the throttle pretty hard, quite a bit. I suspect that if you want to, you could probably, if you wanted to do some sort of endurance or time trials, this would be a pretty good candidate in the micro category for something like that, because you could probably find yourself getting well over 6 minutes with the right battery, with the right flight pattern, with the right weather. So if you're looking for something for flight time, I think this is a really good candidate. And I would direct people who are either A, want longer flight time, or B, are getting started and want longer flight time. Oftentimes, after you get a fair bit of experience, your desire or need to have a longer flight reduces. I think some of that comes from fatigue, the focus that you get with your eyes and your fingers when you're flying fast forward and you're doing a lot of different things all the time. But as you're training yourself or starting down your FPV journey, something like this is a pretty good candidate. I do think there's a couple things they could have improved. One, every time we see this canopy design, we have no camera angle adjustment. You have to start carving things out, and I did that on the King Kong 110 GT, and there's a little bracket that's actually part of the canopy, and the camera just kind of glues to it. And I actually had a crash, and you see here where the camera separated, and in order to fix that crash, I added hot glue. So my weight may actually be higher than your weight because of the hot glue that I added to repair the camera. But you're going to have to do something extreme in this case because the camera mount is actually part of the canopy. So you're going to need to do something different if you desire more camera tilt. Now we have these really wide angle cameras, and oftentimes you can really get nose down and you can still see, but if you get too far nose down, you're not going to be able to see horizon at all anymore. You're just going to be looking at the ground, so kind of flying blind. They did carve out a little bit of the arms here to recess these wires, and I don't think it really had much of an impact. You know, something this light, I don't think we're going to get much arm flex, so that really isn't something that bothers me a great deal. I continue to want battery strain relief. If they could have just maybe added a couple tiny little slots right here so we could run a zip tie through there, and then we could zip tie our battery lead down so that if the battery did eject, it wouldn't actually tear our battery lead off of the pads. Again, we saw JST, but it's easier to go from JST to XT30 if that's what you desire than it is to go from an XT30 to a JST. That to put a JST on generally requires a crimper. They changed the design with the strap. Instead of going all the way around it like they had in past, where it actually went all the way around the carbon plate, they put these little cuts in, and I was kind of excited to see that because I've had a number of vehicles where the rubber band went all the way around. I kind of always thought that was just give us a strap so we don't have to deal with the rubber band. Some people prefer it. I don't. I like a flat bottom plate, add Duralock, and use a battery strap, but it seems to keep things from moving around much. But in this case, I think it's implemented wrong, actually. I think it actually needed to have a longer notch on each end, and I think the opening should have been possibly back here, because I found that I was fussing around with this rubber band a lot whenever it came to getting new batteries on or taking an old battery off. Invariably, one side would come out, and that slot's narrow enough that, with my fingers at least, it was a challenge to get the rubber band back in there. It's a minor concern, but it's something that I noted, and it's something I thought would be worthwhile for you, is that you might want to consider taking the canopy and the 4 screws out and actually putting this rubber band all the way around the carbon fiber plate if you find that that also happens to you. I did fly this outside, or excuse me, I did fly this inside, and I did put the prop guards on, and I just didn't find them effective. It won't come through in the recording, but unless you hit right where the supports are, and well, as you can kind of tell there, really, unless you hit right here, these are so flexible they don't provide much protection. It's going to, a glancing blow off a piece of furniture or an immovable object in your house or warehouse or wherever you're flying indoors, it will help. But the props, as you see here, are also well exposed because the prop guards don't come up around the outside edge. They just are at the lower portion, so you do end up sometimes getting wedged underneath stuff and you can't get out because the prop is locked underneath that. So I think while these prop protectors do provide you some level of prop protection, it's not all that effective. I actually found that I broke the one prop that I broke, this one here, I broke that inside. Of all the crashes I had outside, I broke a prop inside with the prop guards. So that should tell you something. The battery it ships with is fine. It'll work for you. It's serviceable. It's not the top performer. It's not the worst performer, but you won't experience brownouts and other things. You're probably wondering about my antenna. I had problems trying to figure out how I was going to mount that. And if you look real closely, you see right there, this antenna was actually underneath this screw. When they screwed it down, it kind of chewed off the edge, but thankfully I didn't have any range problems. I didn't have any fail safes or anything like that, but I wanted to keep it exposed because I was worried about that. So I just took a little bit of tape and I put it right there on top. Not the most beautiful thing to do, but it was effective in staying out of the props. I think the only thing left for them to include on this outside of the ability to add camera angle is a beeper. And I do think there's room inside that I think Youbi needs to be doing that. I really think all micro manufacturers need to find a way of working in a beeper. But that's one thing that they choose oftentimes to leave off. We see it every once in a while. The full speed products have beepers on them. Every once in a while you'll see other brands come out with beepers. But Awesome or Youbi or King Kong, they all tend to leave that off. So I think that's something they should correct with micros, is to include a buzzer. Now the comparison is going to come with the FD, or the F100, excuse me. And I do have that. And the F100, I'm not going to give you a full review. I'm not quite ready for that yet. I need to fly it some more, I think. It's kind of dirty and bent up. I need to swap those props out. But I've flown it quite a bit, so I can do a quick comparison, so I won't have to draw you back in here. You know, the components are almost identical. The only difference is the frame design and how it looks. You know, you've got a little bit of an arm difference. This is a true X over here with the F100, and this is more of a dead cat or H style over here with the Youbi XV. And we also have dimensions. This one's 5 millimeters more from motor to motor, but essentially they fly very, very similar. But this one is heavier. We have this metal bracket going around the side, but it also has a camera that tilts. So you have to kind of weigh that. You'll notice that mine has the black tape on it, and that's because I found that these wires were long enough to where they could possibly get into the props, so I put some electrical tape on those. But with all that said and done, if someone were asking me, which someone probably would in the comments if I didn't cover it here, but if someone were asking me which one would you get, I would get the Youbi XV95. I think with the lighter weight that you'll tend to have longer flights, which is nice. It's a really good thing if that's what you're looking for. Even if you're not looking for it, means when you do crash, you can go pick it up and you still got plenty of battery life. You can just turn it over and fly again. But anyways, you know, with a long flight time means you got plenty of battery juice left. I think the camera angle for these in particular isn't that big a deal because they're not screamers. You're not going to be setting any speed records with these. I don't want to call them cruisers because that makes them sound like they can't do any acrobatics. These are fully capable of any acrobatic move. They're just going to be different because you don't have the upward thrust that you might be looking for with larger quads in comparison to larger quads. These are going to give you good thrust. You're going to get a little bit more out of this because there's a reduced weight and the parts are pretty much identical. You're also, if you fly in environments where, especially this time of year with the fall, you might be seeing more dew on the grass. And if you fly early in the morning, this is going to keep your electronics more protected. And this one's a little bit more exposed. So that's my comparison. If you're comparing these two, I would recommend getting this one. One last thing I'll mention before we go. I think it's about time that they put that slot in there. I was tired of doing it myself. How about you? I do wish that we had a spot to add a little zip tie or something to firm up this antenna. What you might want to do is you might want to take some foam tape and just kind of roll up a tube of it and stick it back here. I was going to do that. You can see I actually got a few strikes here on my antenna. A little bit chewed up there. So that's something you might want to consider, as it does want to flop down, and when you're flying fast forward, the wind is going to be pushing against it. So there's a possibility, as you can see here, evidence of prop strikes. That completes my entire and total experience with the Youbi XV95. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please leave those in the section down below. There's also a link down below in the description where you can check out this product further. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.